Hello, my name is Justin Collins, and I'm here to provide a financial analysis on the company Nike, as well as provide a little bit about history and current events that have been going on, and a little bit as to why maybe we should or should not invest ourselves in Nike. So first, just a little bit about Nike. So Nike started off not as Nike. It started off as Blue Ribbon Sports, and it was headquartered in Beaverton, Oregon, and it was founded in 1964 by Bill Bowerman and Phil Knight. Bill Bowerman at the time was a track coach at the University of Oregon, and Phil Knight was his former student. So the actual Nike brand was launched in 1972, but the company itself would be renamed as Nike Inc. in 1978. Later on, it became public 2 years later in 1980, and over the years, it has grown tremendously. So now let's just skip a little bit to 21st century so we can see more of their achievements. Nowadays, they have retail outlets and distributors in more than 170 countries, and it has acquired many other sportswear and footwear companies. So, for instance, there's Converse, there's CanStar Sports, and Umbro. So, CanStar Sports and Umbro are kind of not only were they footwear companies, but they included sports accessories and sports apparel, which helped Nike not only be a footwear company, but branch out into other things such as sports accessories for extreme sports and clothing brands and apparels. And most of its growth is actually kind of due to the athletes that it sponsors. So, for instance, the one that everybody knows for sure is Michael Jordan, which they sponsored, and it helped them grow tremendously. And there's also other people such as Mia Hamm, Roger Federer, and Tiger Woods. So there's also some current events that Nike's been focusing on. Nike nowadays has been focusing more on being politically correct and trying to please all the different kinds of groups of people. So there was a recent event with a new shoe that was produced, which had the 13 star flag. However, um, a football player named Colin Kaepernick had an issue with it, and he thought it was racist, so he had it actually removed from shelves. This caused a debate as to whether Nike did the right or wrong thing, and overall, Nike did receive a just more positive feedback than anything for actually removing the shoes, which actually helped their sales quite a lot. And they also included other things such as plus size mannequins to kind of please the new body positivity movement that has been going on recently. And there's also been an instance with pregnant athletes where pregnant athletes were actually kind of being penalized for being pregnant. So women were actually scared to come out and tell Nike that they were pregnant in fears of receiving less money than the other female athletes. So nothing too crazy has been going on with Nike. They've just been mostly trying to ride the wave of being politically correct and trying to make pretty much everyone happy. So we pretty much covered the kind of foundation of Nike, and I kind of want to jump into the analytics and the numbers a little bit. So let's start off with the horizontal analysis. I have everything here in this Excel sheet, just nice and organized based on topics. And later on, I will go back to my presentation to kind of wrap everything up and explain to you why we should maybe invest. So right here, as we can see, there's nothing too crazy going on in the beginning. The revenues did increase from the year 2017 to 2018. Oh, and by the way, this is a heads up. All the numbers within this Excel sheet is in millions. Nike did not make only $36,000 in 2018. It is actually 36,397 million. So just keep that in mind, please, and I'll continue from here. So there's been an increase, a 5.96% increase in revenues, and there's also consequently been an increase in cost of sales as well, a 7.37% increase. So comparing the years, we can see that not only did revenue increase a little bit, but so did cost of sales, and The expenses it increased a tiny bit here, and it actually decreased a little bit, but it was not significant enough compared to the enormous increase in income tax expense, which is a whopping 270.28%. And this actually increased our total expenses by a lot over the year from 2017 to 2018, and it increased it by 22.32%. This affected our net income a lot because it actually decreased our net income it decreased it by 54.41% over the year. So this is mostly due to the huge increase in income tax expense, which may be due to there's been a little bit of outrage towards Nike for not paying their employees well, and minimum wage issues and a bunch of other issues that have kind of compiled up. So maybe they did not make a clear statement, but perhaps they addressed this, and therefore increase in income tax was there was therefore there may have been an increase in the income tax expense. So looking at our vertical analysis on the income statement, we can see that it's kind of similar. It's pretty much the same thing, nothing too out of the ordinary. Cost of sales did increase compared to 2017. You look at the percentages, so did the total selling and administrative expenses. And as you can see, once again, the income tax expense increased a lot over the year. And that also, once again, increases the total expenses and decreases the net income. So let's move on to the common size income statement. So I compared Nike to two other companies. I was actually going to do Reebok, but because they're a private company, I cannot really access the information. So I changed it to Puma. Even though Puma is significantly smaller than Nike, it is still one of its top competitors. So if we look here in the common size income statement, we can see that, so on the right here, I actually put the actual numbers, and on the left, I put the common size income statement, which is all the percentages. So this kind of helps me, and if you want to look at the actual numbers itself, it's right here. So looking here, we can see that Nike, compared to the other companies, has kind of a larger cost of sales, probably due to the fact that the company is larger, and this kind of leads to a smaller gross profit. And not only that, oh, well, on the other hand, on the positive, it has a smaller operating expense. So that actually gives it like kind of a boost when it comes to operating income. It is a little bit above Adidas and significantly above Puma. And the other expenses of Nike are a little bit higher. So that kind of, it keeps on going up and down. So there's a higher cost of sales, a lower operating expense, and then higher other expenses. So it kind of brings it all the way back down. So this leaves Adidas with kind of a little bit of a higher net income compared to Nike, and Nike just kind of ties off with Puma at around the same. So here we can see our gross profit percentage. So the gross profit percentage, as you can see here, Adidas has the highest at 50.21%, and Nike actually seems to have the lowest gross profit percentage compared to the other companies. But when you look at the profit margin ratio, at the end, it kind of does tie off between Nike and Puma, and Adidas being the largest once again. If we look at the common size balance sheet, we'll see a few common trends here. So Nike's current assets seem to be pretty much the same with the rest of them. However, it does have a significantly larger of property, plant, and equipment. So the inventory is a lot larger, and its intangible assets are a lot smaller and significantly lower than the rest. But its other assets seems to be kind of balanced out between each of them. And if we look at the current liabilities, the only thing that really stands out is the long-term liabilities. If you look over here, Nike had a much larger long-term debt compared to the rest of the companies. That's what I noticed. And when you are investing in a company that is actually kind of a red flag, however, I think that due to Nike being a much larger company and having a much larger assets and other inventories, I think it kind of covers it. So although it may be larger compared to other companies, I think it kind of balances out because it is a much larger company than for say like Adidas and Puma. So there's nothing that really stands out. It's just mostly there's much larger like other smaller liabilities that kind of stack up that make it much larger than the other two companies. But in the end, it kind of evens out between Nike and Adidas. The total liabilities kind of even out, and the shareholders' equity, it just kind of also evens out between Nike and Adidas. But Puma is significantly larger, but it kind of doesn't really matter because it's kind of in comparison to itself. It does not really take into like consideration the size of the company compared to other companies. So let's move on to the ratios. So if we're looking at the ratios, a little more. So when looking at the ratios here from years 2017 to 2018, the cash ratio pretty much stayed the same. There's nothing really significantly different, or it's just 0.7 to 0.7, which shows how it pretty much shows the company's ability to pay for its like current liabilities from cash equivalents. And as you can see from the asset test ratio, it actually decreased from 2017 to 2018. Sorry. Oh, actually, sorry for that. I had to do something really quick. So if we look at the acid test ratio, it goes from 1.8 to 1.45, which is actually negative, and it shows how maybe there was an increase in the total current liabilities, decreasing the value, as well as you can see in the current ratio, which shows kind of a decrease in the total current assets and an increase in total current liabilities. So let's now go down to the solvency ratios. So for debt ratio, it actually increases from 0.47 to 0.57, as we can see here. So it shows how the liabilities have increased over time, and there's also an increase in the debt to equity ratio, as we can see here, from 0.87 to 1.3. So although in the previous slide, if we look at the debt to equity ratios between the companies, although there was a higher liability in Nike compared to the other companies, it actually kind of balances out to its high equity. So the number 1.3 and 1.44 is kind of similar between Nike and Adidas, whereas Puma is significantly lower. But as you can see, the high liabilities kind of gets evened out in that case. But when in comparison to itself over the years, it actually increased significantly. So if we look at the times interest earned ratio, there was kind of an issue due to there was an extremely high interest. Sorry, the number is actually extremely high due to the extremely low interest expense that we saw earlier, and it was much lower than the rest of the values. I cannot see why. So these numbers are extremely high, but it goes from 83.81 to 81.09. So now if we look down here, here is the profitability ratios. And so the profit margin ratio decreases from 0.12 to 0.05. And the rate of return on total assets was 0.09. And the asset turnover ratio was 1.62, and the rate of return on common stockholders' equity was 0.17. And the earnings per share decreases significantly from 2.56 to 1.19. So overall, if we kind of look at the year between 2017 to 2018, there seems to be a higher increase in liabilities and kind of a decrease in kind of returns overall on Nike as their expenses and liabilities increase, and kind of that affects their total income and the return of like the money they receive. So that'll actually show on our ROI and RI here. So our profit margin ratio was actually 0.1221, and our asset turnover ratio was 1.589. So this shows our, this actually shows our efficiency and our profitability. So on the profit margin ratio, we can see like how our profitability was measured. And if we multiply these two together, we actually get our ROI, which shows kind of how well we allocate our resources, which in this case seems to be pretty well. And in the residual income, as we can see here, it kind of gives us an idea of like kind of the ROI, but is more expressed in terms of dollars, so we can kind of get a better visual. And sorry for all the confusing numbers and such. Let's just kind of get back to why we should maybe invest in Nike itself, which is the main thing in hand. So when I am wanting to invest in a company, I want the company to care about me because I am the investor and I want to feel like I'm important. So Nike does this by doing many different things. So one of the first things I looked at actually was its mission statement, which was that it said it brings inspiration. They want to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world, no matter who. So I think this is kind of a strong statement, and it kind of represents Nike and how they want to pretty much appeal to everyone that they can. They don't want to exclude anyone, and they want to do everything they can to make everyone feel like they are included. So if we look here, I was able to do some research on Nike, and I realized that that management was kind of important. And Nike's management, what they do is they not only manage like a positive image to the public, but they also try to be extremely aggressive and maintain that top dog position. So I noticed that Nike goes out of their way a lot to do things such as I mentioned earlier. They removed that their brand new shoe, which probably took a bunch of production and thought and maybe a lot of costs into producing the shoe, and they put it on shelves, but it was immediately removed due to the feedback. So they do everything they can to maintain and make pretty much keep the people happy. And they also had this the management produced a strategy called Triple Double Strategy, which actually was released in 2017, which is their new growth plan that pretty much doubles speeds to the market. And not only that, but it also doubles its direct connections to consumers. Or that was the statement that it was supposed to be. And over the years, Nike sales using the strategy has increased by 10%, and it's carrying it has a much stronger impact in 2019 based on articles. It says that sales have been increasing like slowly and steadily due to the strategy and feedback from customers. And not only that, we learned earlier that there was different kinds of costing, such as job order costing and process costing. So Nike is actually a hybrid combination of both. Nike utilizes the concept of process costing, of course, when it produces just mass amounts of a shoe or its product. And as we can see, that's just the basic shoes that we get in stores. But also, they have been lately, or not lately, but just over the years, have been doing job order costing, where you are able to actually, people are able to create their unique own shoe. So using Nike ID, people are able to actually create their whatever shoe however they want, and it's a complete unique idea. And this kind of creates an advantage for Nike as they're able to now spread out to even more people. As for instance, if they don't like a shoe in the market, they're able to create their own. And not only that, they also try their best to create as many benefits to their users. So there's like a Nike app that people get rewards from buying stuff. And also just the management in general, as I did research, for instance, the earlier mentioned CEO, sorry, his name was Phil Knight. Phil Knight was actually extremely personal with everything. He made sure that the consumers were always happy, and he was always trying to be as personal as he can with the consumers, as well as his own management team and his company. So I think when we take all these things into consideration, I personally would want to invest in Nike because I feel like they take their consumers very seriously and they make sure they act quick to feedback. And I feel like I would be an important person if I was a part of their company or investing in their company. So using all the information provided, I hope you're able to kind of get an idea of what Nike is and maybe if you want to invest in it yourself. Thank you.